So this week I have Live by Night, and my hopes for 2017 being a better year for film have already been put to the test. I'm about to save you some time and some money.
But
Yeah.
it's Ben Affleck, and he's so hot in this.
No.
Oh, I think so.
No, go see Justice League or Batman or something like that. No, he is like just squishy. He seems squishy.
He's back to the dazed and confused Ben Affleck.
No. He's just sort of like he doesn't really need to be in shape for this one. And they wear it's set in the 20s. It's a gangster movie. And it's set in the 20s. It's set in Boston and Florida. And so of course the period attire was those like giant, ridiculous, almost cartoonish suits. So he's just wearing these giant suits the entire time, or almost the entire time. But yeah, so Ben Affleck wrote, directed, and stars in it. Normally when Ben Affleck does a movie about Boston, I'm like, okay, actually this is within his wheelhouse. But this one's set in Boston and Florida, and I was just like, dude, you have bitten off more than you can chew. He plays a low-level criminal who happens to be the son of a high-up policeman, and he doesn't want to be a gangster, and I'm making air quotes with want, because for someone who doesn't want to be a gangster, he gets awfully involved in gangster business. It's a really convoluted plot, and the way he gets involved is just so insignificant. But he ends up relocating to Florida to take over the rum-running business for Boston's Italian mob, even though he's an Irishman. Go freaking figure. It's so bizarre. Sienna Miller, Zoe Saldana, and Elle Fanning are all in it, and they are completely wasted in their roles. Chris Messina from The Mindy Project plays Ben Affleck's second in command, and they give him these gross baby teeth, which I don't feel like serve a purpose. I feel like it was just there to make Ben Affleck look better, but what's the point? And then Chris Cooper and Brendan Gleeson are also in it. It was just sort of the Ben Affleck show, and I really felt like he just sort of wasted his supporting cast. There was one weird, I don't know why I'm calling this out, but I found it funny that I was looking something up, and Anthony Michael Hall's in it, very briefly, completely unrecognizable. This random Southern gentleman. But basically, it's like a rotating door of these supporting characters. They're all supporting the plot in some way, but it's just sort of about Ben Affleck's rise to power, and I feel like the pitch was Ben Affleck went to the studio and was like, I want to make a gangster movie, and the studio goes, great. He goes, I want to set in the 1920s, and so we can wear the costumes, and we can, have all the guns and talk kind of funny, and they go, great. And he goes, I want to write, direct, and star in it, and they go, oh. And then I'm sure they said, hey, make 5 Justice League movies, and you can do whatever the heck they want, and nobody checked up on him afterwards.
Sure.
So
I'm sure that's part of the deal.
I'm sure it was, because there was, I feel like the editing was off, the pacing was off, like everything was just sort of bleh. Like, I don't have an actual word to describe it, just sort of a sound. It's really meandering. You don't care about the protagonist. There's just so much senseless violence. I think the only interesting thing was there was a bit of a tangent into, like, race exploration in the 1920s, because part of it does take place in Florida, it takes place with a lot of immigrants and sort of seeing the strata of how people treat each other. And tiny spoiler, but not really, like, the Klan is involved in this, because it's the South, and so it's like, okay, I guess that makes sense. At the end of the day, I was like, why did I watch this movie? Like, what's the moral of all of this? And also the ending. The ending was just like pulls the rug out from you, under you. Just, it made no sense. Like, it suffered from what I call like Lord of the Rings syndrome, where there's like 8 different endings, and you're like, it could have ended here, could have ended here, could have ended here, didn't end. So just don't bother. Just don't bother.
So is this like a shave the mohawk rating that you're going to give this one?
I'm not going to shave the mohawk because there's a couple things in it worth seeing, but I'm only going to give it 2.2.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
This is out of 5, by the way, everybody.
Out of 5, but
Wow.
it's really just...
At this point in Ben Affleck's career, has he done more bad movies than good movies?
I'm sure he's done more bad movies than good movies,
Yeah,
but
it seems like it.
at the same time, like, some of his good movies are great. Like Argo is great. The Town is great.
Yeah.
Those are both his like wheelhouse Boston stories. Yep. And when he does other things, I'm like, no, don't. And now he's done something about Boston again, and I'm like, oh no, don't. So I don't know where he's going with his career right now, but I feel like somebody needs to like rein him in and be like, hey, let's like focus again. But either way, I feel like maybe Matt Damon needs to stage an intervention. Like, I'm not sure what's going on here, but like I want to see him be a good director again, and I feel like this sort of allowing him to continue to like run the show completely is not helping his career. And switching gears and going into an Elle Fanning double feature, because she's actually in both of the films that I saw this week, is 20th Century Women. And it's probably the polar opposite of Live by Night. It stars Annette Bening, Elle Fanning, Greta Gerwig, and Billy Crudup, and it takes place in 1979, so again, another sort of period piece. And Annette Bening is a slightly older single mom to a teenage son. Elle Fanning's his friend. Greta Gerwig is a renter in their house, and as is Billy Crudup. So it's very kind of bizarre, but I feel like that's fine for the 70s. I don't think anyone would question it. And Annette Bening enlists their help enlists the help of the people around her and her sort of mini community to help raise her son. I would say the film is really more of an exploration of a swatch of time and characters than something heavily plot-driven. But unlike Live by Night, at least it knows that going in. It's not trying to sort of force this random plot that you're supposed to care about. It's just saying, hey, here are these characters. Here's a span of time that we're going to sort of explore. Go with it.
It looks like a movie where you want to be around these characters. You just want to see it. When you watch the trailer, it just looks great.
I don't know if I personally would want to be around those characters in my real life, but I really did appreciate the conversations they were having. It was definitely sort of these micro explorations, and they go into a bunch of topics. I feel like it was weird that some of the characters were trying to overly intellectualize a lot of the topics they go into. There's a lot of sort of referencing quotes and literature and art, and that's normally fine, but I'm like, okay, let's also bring this down to like a down-to-earth level. And make it accessible for people. But it was really interesting. It's also interesting that a film that's so strongly meant to be about women is about raising a man or a boy. It was an interesting choice, and unfortunately, maybe I feel like it was a little bit of a way to get guys into the cinema, but I do think people should see this film, so if it's what they needed to do, it's what they needed to do. Again, it's a bit sprawling, and it covers all of these things. It covers sexuality and music and feminism and health and all sorts of things. I do have to say, I think the performances were really strong. And the most interesting thing was the dichotomy between the mindsets of the women, because you've got Annette Bening, who's a 50-year-old, you've got Greta Gerwig, who's a 20-year-old, and you've got Elle Fanning, who's like a teenager. And even in the late 70s, seeing sort of the different ways women were sort of perceived and how they perceive each other, and how, you can be 5 years apart and you can still think somebody else is old and stodgy, even though they're only 20.
Yes.
And unfortunately, I got to say, given sort of the political climate that's underway, like a lot of the important things about it were like women's rights and reproductive rights and how that's going to be affected. So that one was a little bit of a gut punch yesterday. Yeah, but I really actually encourage people to see it. Just know going in, it's not going to be heavily plot-driven. But again, some things try to be heavily plot-driven and don't succeed. So at least this knew what it was doing. I'm going to give it 4 out of 5.
Sweet.
Wow.
Okay, good, because I want to see it. And Annette Bening, she's amazing in everything.
And I really liked, one, this film passes the Bechdel test, which makes me really happy, which is when you have two female characters who have names, who have a conversation about something other than men. And you would be surprised how many films do not pass this test.
Yeah.
I also really like that she's just sort of like natural in it. They're not like trying to make her up and de-age her. She's just sort of Annette Bening.
Yep.
I'm like, good for you for playing somebody age appropriate, and this is a really great performance. Like, I'm glad to see an actress of like an appropriate age playing this, and them not trying to like make her young and sexy and like the young mom who has a teenager or something like that. I thought that it was a really great film.